So welcome everyone to this introduction to Moctezuma's Mexico, then and now. I'm David Carrasco, the historian of religions, and I'll be team teaching this course with Professor William Fash, great archaeologist of Mesoamerica. And I opened up with the face mask of the Aztec calendar stone to give you a sense of the artistic and religious power of the world we're going to be visiting. Moctezuma's Mexico has many aspects, but the three that I want to emphasize today to introduce you to the class are, first of all, the pre-Hispanic Moctezuma's Mexico, which you see represented behind me here in this mural painted by the great Diego Rivera. And this is Moctezuma's Mexico as a world of a great city. You know, Mexico was one of the 7 areas in human history where people invented cities sui generis, that is, without any influence from other urban traditions. And at the center of their city stood the great Aztec temple. This course focuses on that temple and on that city as a way of introducing you to the religious and political world of Moctezuma's Mexico. But the second dimension of the class that I want to make sure that you get a sense of so that you can become interested in is Moctezuma's Mexico in terms of the so-called conquest of Mexico. We call now the great encuentro, because it was a contact zone between the great civilization of Spain and the great civilization of the Aztecs. And what was so important about this meeting was the exchanges that took place, not only the exchanges in terms of seeds, but also in terms of races. The European race came together with the indigenous world and also the Africans to form a mestizaje, a racial mixture that was so important to the identity of Mexico in the colonial period and Mexicans today. But a part of this was also the introduction of some very powerful epidemics. Mexico itself suffered one of the great pandemics in human history. In our course, we'll talk about that exchange as well and how it shaped Mexican attitudes toward the body, toward the family, toward death and the afterlife. But the third dimension of Moctezuma's Mexico that we hope will interest you and draw you into this class is the Latinx Moctezuma's Mexico. That is, Moctezuma's Mexico as a borderlands, and the ways in which the meanings and the powers and the traditions of the Mexican people came up to the Mexican-U.S. border and shaped the way in which the Latinx community today remembers not only its past, but its present and also its future possibilities. The Latinx people have reinvented in their own way one of the great creations of the colonial Mexican world, the Virgin of Guadalupe. We'll be talking about La Virgen de Guadalupe in Mexico and the borderlands and here at Harvard because she's become a powerful presence here. We'll also introduce the students and give you a chance to participate in the Day of the Dead, the Dia de los Muertos, so important in Mexico and becoming so important in the way the Latinx people consider themselves not only the inheritors of this great tradition of Moctezuma's Mexico, but the way in which Latinx people are shaping the future of this world. Join me and Professor Fash, who you'll be hearing from in a few minutes, and come take this course, Moctezuma's Mexico Then and Now, with us. You'll have a marvelous time, and we'll learn together. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm archaeologist Bill Fash. I'll be your co-teacher on this great course on Moctezuma's Mexico Then and Now, with my good colleague, Prof. David Carrasco of the Harvard Divinity School. As archaeologists, we've had our fair share of adventures. We'll share a few of those with you, but mostly the idea is to explore the past of Mexico, the archaeological past, historical past, 20th century past, and current Mexico as well. As an archaeologist, I devote most of my time to studying the sometimes spectacular rise and often tumultuous fall of some great urban traditions in the part of the world where I work, Mexico and Central America. And I try and figure out what lessons they took away from all of these great adventures in urban life over the course of thousands of years. And what can we learn in turn from those experiences and the way that they transform their societies to adapt to the world in which they found themselves then and now. So we'll look at things like the bedrock values that inspired people then and today, things like their religious beliefs and traditions, what Profe Carrasco refers to as their cosmovision, their ways of thinking about the world, their interesting traditions in terms of language and food and lifeways, all the things that made up their collective identity. Today in Mexico, identity can be seen in these massive pilgrimages that they make to sacred sites on calendrically timed anniversaries, just as they did in the ancient past. So this brings us to the topic of monuments, which happens to be one of my specialties. Why, for example, did the peoples of Mexico build pyramids?
Bill Fash looks to Alter Q to point him in the right direction.
On Alter Q, we have a handsome portrait of Kinich'Yashkuk-Mo, the founder, and a textual reference to this being the stone of Yashkuk-Mo. The implication is this is his place and his monument. It happens to be placed in front of one of the most massive temple pyramids on the site. The implication is that this is the funerary temple of Kinich'Yashkuk-Mo, the founder of the Copan dynasty. But to find out if that's true, we have to dig.
And who are portrayed on all of the statues? Are these gods? Are they rulers, both women and men? Because we know that at the time of European contact, they were very powerful women in ancient Mexico, and you'll be able to look at the evidence for that in the archaeological record. Were there literary figures also extolled in these monuments and hieroglyphic inscriptions of the ancient past? Who were the players on the scene of ancient Mexican history? You'll get a chance to explore all of this and much more with the explanatory frameworks and theoretical tools that we will give you in this course that you can then apply to other situations around the world. In terms of monuments, I'm particularly interested in your views on what caused the destruction of monuments. Who did it and why? What can that teach us about what did and didn't work in the past? So you'll be looking at an example of one of the earlier civilizations of Mexico, the great city of the gods, as the Aztecs called it, which was burned to the ground in 550 AD in a fiery conflagration. 1,000 years before the Spaniards ever showed up. Was it an internal revolt? Not all that different, perhaps, from what we're seeing in this country today? Or was it an external invasion, such as the Aztecs saw when the Spaniards showed up on the scene? We'll also be looking at pandemics. The one that came about as a result of the Spanish invasion was the worst known in recorded human history. How were they able to adapt to losing 90% of the population within the space of 100 years? What can that tell us today in Mexico and the U.S. in terms of great ways to respond to the challenges posed by the pandemic? So we'll look forward to learning your views on these topics as we have breakout groups and get to know you individually in conversations and learn more about you and what you think about Moctezuma's Mexico then and now. Profe Carrasco and I have assembled an all-star crew of teaching fellows who are going to make your experience wonderful this fall. Our head TF, Sarah Loomis, is a graduate student in archaeology and an expert in 3D technologies and the archaeology of Western Mexico. Juliana Cohen studied anthropology and religion and is interested in the intersection between spirituality and caregiving practices in Latin America. Pedro Morales is a graduate of the Harvard Divinity School, a community organizer and writer who analyzes religion, political movements, and public policy in Mexico-U.S. relations. Alfredo Garcia is a PhD in the study of religion, analyzing healing rituals, or curaciones, in the U.S.-Mexico borderlands.